Welcome to the Deep Leadership Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Lou Everett and Sherri McManus. Lou and Sherri run the Lou Everett Group here in Raleigh, North Carolina. They are known for their highly effective coaching, teaching, and speaking on the topic of leadership. They focus on the importance of personal growth and how it impacts a leader's influence. I'm excited to have them on the show to talk about personal growth as a leader. So, Lou and Sherri, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having us, John. We're excited.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Nice and sunny day out today. Why not do a podcast?
I know. Yeah, we should be outside. It's beautiful out there, but we're inside doing a podcast. Yeah,
so it's okay. That's all right.
That's how dedicated we are to our craft, right?
That's it. That's right.
So first of all, how did you both get involved in the topic of leadership? I know I'm involved in it, and I know how I got here, but how did you guys end up getting involved in this business?
That's it's a question we get asked a lot, and it goes back a ways. And each one of us have our own little story there, and then we even have a combined story, really. So, I mean, for the purpose of time for you, I'll start off if you want, and then I'll give it to Sherri to tell her story behind that. But my journey into the leadership space started when I was around 12 years old, probably a little younger than that. My mom started me off in this whole concept. And it wasn't by choice, it was by indoctrination, really. That's kind of how it worked with moms, right? But no, I mean, the whole thing is before you having an example was really good. My mom and dad both are really good examples of being able to be solid leaders in their family. But my mom in particular, instead of, when your mom would drop you off at the store or drop you at a friend's house or school or whatever, when you didn't have a car yet. Well, my mom did the same kind of thing, but instead of me listening to my own tunes that I want to listen to in the car, my mom would be popping in John Maxwell tapes or Tony Robbins tapes.
I see.
Those types of things, and she'd listen to this in the car. And so, of course, I'm in the car, and I know now, looking back, that mom was also teaching me. So it really all kind of started there, and understanding that the value of what leadership is and personal growth and how that all really comes about. So that's really kind of where it began for me. And then throughout my life, I've always led into roles in other companies and always moved up into management roles, supervisor roles, director roles, executive director roles, things like this. And that was the very beginning of that. Of course, there's not enough time for us to talk about all 4.5 decades of our experience and what we've done. But that's where it started for me. And for us, we started a business in 2005 on our own, 4 months after we met and started dating. Sherri and I are married, and we started our own first business in 2005 together after we just moved in together, after knowing each other for 4 months. So let me just throw out this to your listeners: is if you really want to know if your relationship is going to work, start a business. Right? No,
I don't know if that's good advice. I really don't.
Don't do it the way we did it. But anyway, that's kind of our journey to kind of up to that point, and we had that in our blood, and we are here now. We'll talk more about that later.
Sure.
But Sherri can tell you hers, because hers is a little different than my start. So
yeah. So with mine, my mom always shares a story when here I was, we lived in a neighborhood, and we were fortunate to have other kids in the neighborhood, and we used to play, weekly or outside, and my mom tells me a story. Oh gosh, I was 6, probably, I don't know, 7, 8, around that time. And with all the kids, I was like the littlest one out of everyone. And here I was barking orders to everyone. And I'm telling them what to do, what games we're playing. And here they were following me. And so my mom shares that story. And I was like, oh, so here's some characteristics of a leader with that. So it started pretty young. And then similar to Lou, as I get older, leaned into those qualities, being a leader, being in a management role, and work my way up. I knew the value of starting from the bottom and working your way up, and hard work and ethic, and I really contribute that to my mom and dad with their work ethic, to work hard. And I've always been fortunate to be in those type of roles, and to continue on that. They're very common when people ask the question of, well, are leaders born or made? And, that's a loaded question,
Mhm.
and I think everybody,
It's a topic. That's a
it's a
topic
great,
right there.
yeah, it's a topic right there. So, I think there's characteristics, and then we just lean into them, and it's up to us to make that go even further to use for the greater good. So that's pretty much where I
Where we
started.
started. Now, if you want, John, we can tell you really what was the nail in the coffin, so to speak, that made us realize that, first of all, what we've been doing as far as leadership development and corporate training, that really was our purpose, and we needed to really do this full force. If you would like, we can certainly tell you that
Yeah,
story too.
it's always interesting. I know I can tell the exact moment I decided to leave corporate life and start my own company. I knew that exact moment. In fact, I write about it in my new book coming out here soon. But so what was that moment? So when did you guys decide in 2005 that you're going to start a business and you're going to train people on this strange topic called leadership?
Well, you see, 2005, when we started our first business, really wasn't in that scope, wasn't really in that space.
I see.
When we first started, actually. But we learned, it was just part of our journey, though, that we take with us, because we learned the value of solid, strong leadership, not just in business, but in family and relationships. But it was, we started this business in 2018. And we were both working still full time with other companies while we were building this business. But in 2018, and I'll start, and Sherri can certainly finish this, is in 2018, in August of 2018, Sherri had caught a cold that led to pneumonia, and then it led to this really rare disease. And we didn't know if she was going to live or die. I brought her to the ER because it was like The Walking Dead. I mean, her whites of her eyes were bright red, her lips were bloody. It just looked like a zombie thing. And I was like, what is going on here? And immediately they determined that it had to be something that was a specific disease. It was a derivative of Steven Johnson's syndrome called MIRM, MIRM. And what her body was doing is it was attacking all of her good mucous membranes in her body. And it was burning her from the inside out.
Wow.
And so they transported her to the ICU burn center, in the ICU at the burn center, to be treated. I'm not treating the symptoms because it was very rare. And doctors couldn't tell me if she was going to live through this or die through this. She had trouble she had to have procedures on her eyes done. A long story short, they said she could not make it. She could be in her 30 days. She could be here 90 days. We don't know. And because of the good doctors, and I'll give a shout out to UNC and Chapel Hill. What a heck of a team. And these team of doctors, and Sherri just being Sherri and being determined to work through this. She was out in 10 days.
Wow.
And she only has some residual effects, dry eyes, right? And a chronic cough occasionally because of that's just going to be permanent now for the rest of her life. But man, it could have been a whole different story. But the reason I mentioned this is because Sherri was working with a company, and on her team, the management was very toxic. The culture was very toxic. The culture was a very positional style, top-down hierarchical structure, where it was a lot of verbal abuse, a lot of that type of banter with, you must work, you got whatever you got to do to get this done, you got to get it done, whether you have to work 75 hours a week, 80 hours a week, it doesn't matter. And because of that culture, that's what led to this situation with Sherri. Every single member of the team, we had a team of about 15 doctors. Every one of them, once they grilled me because Sherri was barely talk. She couldn't talk because her was burning, number one, and she was under medication. And when I asked what she was doing, what environment she worked in, and they said it's because of the stress that she endured in that situation. And that's when we knew. That's when we knew that we were doing the right thing by starting the Lou Everett Group, and that we were determined at that moment to dedicate our purpose and our mission into transforming today's leaders.
That's great. Wow. It's really powerful. I mean, the impact of toxic environments is just, it's widespread, and the effect on, I mean, it's not just, in your case, it was physical health, right? But mental health and just the stress that people go under working in these environments is unbelievable. And, it's really sad to hear that, right? Because, when we start a company, when we run a company, we want to achieve these great things, right? We want to make profits. We want to make happy customers. We want to make, innovation, right? So we need people to do that, right? So we need to have people engaged and love what they do. But yet there's still so many managers out there that believe the only way to run a business is by barking orders and directing people to do what they say. And for my case, I did 22 years in corporate America before I started my own company, before I pulled the what do you call it? When I punched out of the jet and shot out the top, I just couldn't take it anymore. I just saw, it wasn't so much in the case of toxic work environments, but it's almost like apathy. I mean, it just, nobody cared anymore because the managers didn't care about the people didn't care about the managers, and everyone just sort of was punching their clock and going home every day. And I was like, there's more to work than just punching a clock, right? We are people, and we ought to have relationships at work. And if you want to be a great leader, you need to know people, and you need to know what makes them tick, and every person's motivated differently. So it's really sad when I hear about toxic work environments, when I hear about, bad bosses. And the whole purpose of this podcast and everything I do is to build a world with better bosses. And so that's why you're a perfect guest to be on today. So that was one of the things I saw. I noticed that you talked about, your past experience, Sherri, with the toxic work environment. I think each of us, when we get in a situation like that, it suddenly snaps that this is not the way we should be living. This is not the way we should be working. And I'm really glad to see that you guys, said this is going to end right now. We're going to do something about it. So
that's right. Absolutely.
That's exciting.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
So, if you were to look at some of the leaders you've had, in your past, and then the kind of leaders you want to create going forward, these great leaders, what are some of the characteristics of great leaders in companies and business and in, nonprofits? What are the great leaders doing right?
Doing a lot of things right, especially if they're great leaders.
Well, I can start with the one. It all starts with me, right? Mm-hmm. The me principle.
Yes.
Yeah. We created our proprietary, with our coaching, with our experience, proprietary coaching method. And one of our methods, and the first one, because it's empowerment training, starts with the letter M, and it starts with me. And that is the first principle. And that's not about me or him. It is actually about the person and the personal development. And I know in my journey, that was a big, big realization. Like, I always knew I needed that personal development, and I dabbled in it, but it really didn't strike me okay, I really need this until after I got out of the hospital, and I had that space to really dive in and going, how can I be a better person? What can I do? And it all starts with yourself. So getting back to what makes one character anyway of a good leader is that they're always learning and always growing. And it really starts with themselves first.
Yep. Right? I agree. And that's taken from our empowerment leadership system that's proprietary to us, that we've created. Which we can throw you a link so your listeners can check it out if they want to. We have a webinar series we're currently in the middle of once a month that goes over each one of those principles. But that is absolutely a quality that's emphasized in there is the necessity to work on you first. Because the reality of it is, John, that we can only give at the level of our own growth.
Right.
That's it. I mean, that's all we can't give anymore. You can talk the talk, but you can't give anything if you're not there yet. And so how can you lead people or expect them to grow if you're not growing? So that's a huge characteristic, is understanding and leading yourself as a leader.
Yeah.
There is and this fits right in with what you're asking, because there is a training that we do called the 6 things a leader should do every day. And this falls right in line with those characteristics. And one of those is learning every day. So a good leader learns every day. So as you go about your everyday life as a leader, look at ways to learn, right? Whether it's observing, whether it's reading a book, or whether it's training, whatever it is, learn every single day, learn something new. That's, that falls right in line with that. So that's one. But there's 5 others that I recommend that a leader should do every single day. We're more than happy to go over those with you, but that's
I want to touch on that because that's really important. But let's stay on this personal growth side because I think this is really interesting. And I'm struggling to teach this in my writings and in my podcasts and in my blog posts. This is the thing I struggle with. The people that need the most training and the most improvement are the ones that are less likely to seek self-improvement. So, the toxic managers that we talk about, the top-down bureaucrats, the guys that, and it could be women too, women and men that are just toxic bosses, right? They're the ones that are least likely to seek out self-improvement, right? They're the ones that know everything, right? Why would I listen to a podcast on leadership? Because I know everything already. Why would I read a book on leadership? Because I know everything already. Sometimes I feel like we in the leadership training space are preaching to the choir. We're preaching to the good leaders already, right? That are seeking self-improvement. So I know this wasn't one of the questions we expected to talk about, but what do you think? Like, how do we get to the people that really need to hear the message? This is one area I really struggle with.
Yeah,
it's very common.
It is common. And well, we know if you're talking to the C-suite level, and we know because we're in this space that we know it starts with the top, right? We know that. We know if it's corrupted, it's typically at the top.
Yeah, culture starts there.
And the culture starts there. So, but if you tap into the mindset of, what do C-suite and that type of level, what do they care about most? There typically is a couple buckets, and they're very, it's very common in our experience. And we know that one of those buckets is the bottom line. As much as we all cringe because we know better, but that's their language. So you have to learn how to speak to their language. And of course, but the bottom line, well, what's in it for me? So we flip that and say, well, imagine is that your attrition will go down. Or imagine that you have, you don't have people flying out the door and having to retrain people to constantly hemorrhage out money. So if you speak that, they're like, well, what if there's a way that we can plug that up a little bit and then we could save you X amount of dollars, then
or increase
your
profit.
Which will.
That's a good, and that's exactly, that's a great point when you're talking to
that level,
to that C-suite level, right? And it goes, it's imperative that they understand that. And I think that sometimes, John, right, can be a misconception for people. Oh, you're one of those leadership trainers. So that means you're going to come in and just talk about personal growth and hoorah, rah, rah all the time. Well, no, we also will address the bottom line, because you see that the bottom line is the leader's responsibility to manage your frontline workers, the people that you lead. Yeah, it's their responsibility too, but it's your burden to carry to make it happen, not theirs. And so by separating that, understanding as a leader, I've accepted the role as a leader. That means you accept the responsibility and the heavy responsibility to manage and lead people effectively. In your mind, okay, I've got this bottom line. How do I balance out the bottom line with understanding and valuing my people so that they perform because they want to follow me, not because they have to follow me? That's where the trick is. Do you want people, you ask yourself two questions. Well, one question, it's either one. Do you want people when they want to come into work, and they'll even tell you, man, you make this job, you make me want to work. Do you want that mentality from your people? Or do you want them to not talk to you much at all unless they have to talk to you, and you almost have to force them to work and get things done? Which one do you want?
Yeah. Which one's easier on you?
That's right. Which one's easier on you, at least at that level. Yeah. But the hard work happens within you as the leader.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because I've got an MBA and I've gone to business school, and one of the things they teach you is we spend more time in teaching you accounting and marketing and sales and the legal side of business. They never teach you about people. But the one thing they do teach you is that in accounting, they teach you that personnel expense, right, is an expense on your P&L statement, so that the more people you have, or the more you pay them, the less profit you have. So that I think in business school, we almost set up that mindset that people are a problem because they're an expense, right?
That's right.
They're not
They're
on the
number.
balance sheet. So all of your equipment, and I run a manufacturing plant, all my equipment is an asset. It's on my balance sheet, not on my P&L, right? And what's an asset? Well, an asset brings long-term value to a company.
Yeah.
So we hear these companies say, well, people are our greatest assets. Really?
Yeah.
Do you
Yeah,
treat them
yeah.
like an asset? Do you maintain them? Do you look after them? Do you make sure that they're, healthy and can contribute, as much as they can? Because a great employee, any employee, can bring future value to a company. It's not about the monthly expense; it's about the future value they bring to the company. And I think that's when it comes down to a bottom line discussion. It's almost getting the people to think differently about people as more of an asset and less of an expense on their P&L statement. I think that's one area that I figured out that's probably where most of us go wrong, is we think of people as an expense and not as an asset. And I think that's the shift I think that has to happen.
I agree.
Absolutely.
100%. Right. I mean, which, and that's a great question that leaders need to start asking, especially at that level, is, okay, are we putting our people on the P&L sheet, or are they on asset side?
They're on the balance sheet. Yeah, right.
Yeah, right. Which one are they on? Which are they? Exactly. The balance sheet, and because that's really going to determine value. I mean, obviously you have the legalities behind why you have to do your paperwork the way you are, but really, in all the grand scheme of things, the reality is that people are your legacy in this business.
Yeah.
Okay, and you can't do it all by yourself. If you could do it all by yourself, you wouldn't need employees to begin with.
Well, we wouldn't need leadership, right? If you could do it all yourself, you don't have to. Leadership is all about getting other people to do difficult things, right? You're working as a team, right?
Exactly.
So you wouldn't need leadership.
That's exactly it. You don't need to be a leader if you don't have the people there.
Right.
And there's this thing in corporate called succession planning.
Yeah.
You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You got to plan succession. What happens if every single one of leadership is on their leadership retreat on a boat somewhere on a cruise, right? And everyone in leadership is there, and something catastrophic happens, and now there's no leadership. Who can take over? It sounds like a terrible thing to think about as a leader, but you need to. Are people prepared and equipped to take over if you're not there? If they're not, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. And you find those toxic leaders, those toxic managers, they carry everything, they don't share. They're keeping everything close to the vest, right? They're making all the decisions. They're the one authority. They don't delegate any of the authority of running the business to anybody else. They hold it all deep. And then when they're gone, it's chaos because no one has been developed. No one has had given any responsibility. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Let's shift over. I really want to hear this. The 6 things that a great leader does every day, because I really like that idea. So what are some of those? What are those 6 things? We talked about personal growth. What are some other ones on that list?
Yeah, personal growth. And so what we're going to tell you, we'll share that we'll do this together, is each one of the first words that we say in these 6 things as we go through spells out leader. Okay. So I'm giving you that heads up. So the first thing was personal growth, but it was technically learn every day.
Okay.
So learn is the first one. You want to take the second one?
Sure. Yeah. So the second one is actually experience. You need to experience every day. And what we mean by that, as you learn, you put it into practice, practice, and you can learn all you want, but the action, right? So the experience, the outcomes, and the influence it has on others.
Mm-hmm.
So experience is every the next one.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So it's learn, experience. The third one's apply. Apply every day. Mm-hmm. So you take what you've learned and take what you've experienced, and you apply what worked and what made a difference in other people. That's apply every day. So learn, experience, apply. Mm-hmm. And then the fourth one.
And the fourth one is develop. So you need to develop yourself and others every day. So it's very similar to the learning, right?
Except you're putting it into action to develop.
Right. So through the application, from what you learned and the experience, again, if you notice, this is building one layer at a time. Mm-hmm. So you have your experience, you have your application, and then you continue to find ways to develop yourself and those that you lead.
Yeah, let's develop. So learn, experience, apply, develop. We have the fifth one, evaluate. Evaluate every day. So again, through your development, you really must evaluate the real impact, okay, and effectiveness that your influence has had on others at this point. And then what you need to do is make adjustments where there's necessary adjustments, keeping your ego aside. Now that's the hard part, right? Keeping your ego aside, evaluating, but doing it in a way that keeps your ego aside, whether it's journaling every night, okay, what we call reflection. We reflect every night on our day. What are some of the things you can do better? Evaluate every day. And the last one?
And the last one is actually repeat. So repeat the same each day. And this will create that habit. And we all know about habits of successful people. So this is actually very parallel. So you have to learn, experience, apply, develop, evaluate, and you do this repeatedly day after day.
And there's your 6 things leaders should do every day.
I like it. I like it. And it spells leader. So
yes,
you guys, either one of you in the military, it seems like military is all about these acronyms. That's
aren't they? Yeah, no, my dad was in the Army. However, I have a big IT background as well. I used to teach IT.
Okay.
And IT is all about acronyms. So it's and it's easy to remember. So
yeah, exactly. So that's pretty straightforward. Maybe I need to do that someplace in my life. I don't think I've created any acronyms yet. So
oh, it's time, John.
It is time. I love it. So tell us a little bit about, I kind of skipped over this, but tell us a little bit about the Lou Everett Group. What do you guys do? You're here in Raleigh. What do you do? Who are you? What are the type of customer or clients you work with, and what are some of the things that you do with those clients?
Yeah. Well, first of all, as a Lou Everett Group, our mission and our purpose is to transform today's leaders. Okay, and what that means ultimately is how to help not create, but add value to current leaders, and give them the tools necessary and the availability of providing them the necessary accountability for them to be successful as a leader at all different aspects. Here's an example. So we work with small businesses, right? Small businesses. Now we have some solo entrepreneurs we've worked with as well. But we have a heart for solo entrepreneurs because that's where we are. We've been there, so we know that, and we know the struggles behind that. But mainly when they have teams, they start developing people. Once they start developing people, that's where we come in and help them to be able to see where they currently are in their business and a person as a person, and where they intend to be. Right? We're looking at something like, how do you get there? But we guide them in the process, in our coaching process, using our own empowerment methods, coaching them in that process of being able to see and feel where that empowered future looks like, and what resources they need to get there. And we've seen significant improvement. We've seen upwards of 600% increase in business growth and revenue in businesses because of walking them through that. Now that's just a coaching piece of it. But we also do corporate training. We do corporate training on communication, on team engagement, entrepreneurship. If there's an entrepreneurship program they need to get into, on development as a leader. So it just goes on. We have a list of things we work on when it comes to training. And we also actually added value a year ago on diversity and inclusion. We have a proprietary diversity and inclusion program called Another Seat at the Table. So, and again, all of it works around developing leaders and transforming their mind, realizing, like you were saying, John, on the value of the people that they lead and how can they navigate that, especially how can they navigate their direct reports too, right? How do you lead up? Right. Those types of things. So those are some of the things that we do and why we love what we do. And we,
And a quick example of this to really hit the point is that how many times have we seen and been to almost any organization that there's the rock star of what they do, right? And then they get promoted because they want to. They're like, well, of course I want to get promoted. So they get promoted. They have a wonderful team. They say, congratulations. And then 6 months later, they get fired because they didn't meet their metrics. Well, it's not 100% fault of the employee.
Right.
The company just didn't equip them.
They didn't give them the bow and the arrow,
Right.
as we call it.
Or they do a trial by fire, which I
Yeah.
think most of us have learned to just kind of deal with that. I know I have my experience. He has his
Oh
experience.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
luckily, we had the characteristics to kind of step up to that. But not everybody does that.
Mhm.
That's not a lot of people. That's a very small percentage. So to expect that as a employee or employer, to expect that, to be like, well, here's your role,
You should
and
just be a leader.
you should
Just
just
go
be
do
a
it.
leader.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not
Get the
it's-
numbers. Do it
that's
right.
setting them
Yeah.
up for failure.
Mhm.
It really is. So we're that solution to help in what people call soft skills. We call them
Call 'em power skills.
power skills.
Wait, let's say that quickly again. So you don't call the people skills, you don't call them soft skills, you call them power skills.
Yep.
Yep.
Ah, interesting.
That's really what they are.
Yeah, yeah,
Soft skill, that's not soft at all.
Yeah.
I mean, as a leader, that's a big responsibility.
yeah. I always say that we hear that a lot, especially in corporate world, is that those are soft skills. Those aren't important. Really? Then
Yeah.
why is it so hard for leaders to actually figure these things out? Like how to treat employees with respect. It seems like a really basic thing. That's a soft skill. What you really need to know is how to balance a balance sheet, right? Or how how to turn a double-digit profit, or how to avoid high taxes or something like that. But really,
How to get your $1 billion goal accomplished. Yeah.
Right. But you do it through people, and I like what you say. It's a power skill, because if you do it right, it multiplies, or brings to the power of all the people that you put, n to the X, right? That X gets bigger if you get more and more people, engaged and involved in the business. Then you multiply the effect of your performance. And it's not just, I always say that the wisdom of a team is so much better than the ideas of just one manager, right? So when you bring in all the people and you bring in all their passions and you bring in all their energy, how much further will you go than just one guy who thinks he knows everything or she knows everything, right?
Yeah.
So it's the idea of a power. It's a multiplier. It's a multiplying effect if you bring people and you engage them. So interesting. Yeah.
100%. Yeah. Multiplication's a big part of it, right? That's what it comes down to. And
Mhm.
you worry about profits. Well, you focus on your people, the profits are going to happen.
Yeah, that's true. It's interesting. I wonder if these toxic managers believe that, right? So they say, well, no, I'm going to focus on the business because that's what I know how to do. I know how to tweak the top line and get more out of the bottom line, reduce my expenses. And then you say, no, focus on the people and the bottom line will come. Do you think they believe that?
Some don't.
Well, yeah, I think it's a weird balance because you hear it said, right?
Right.
We hear it a lot. We've all been in a space where you're on a one-on-one or you're in a meeting with the leadership team and with the entire company or whatever, and they're like, "We just want y'all to know that we really value you, we love you, you are our biggest asset." And then you're thinking, when that person's talking and you know about that person and that's the toxic person, you're like, I don't think you do.
Yeah.
And see, that's an infection.
Yeah.
Right. But here's the thing. I don't necessarily will say that all toxic leaders don't believe it. I believe that they do believe it. They want that.
I think deep down.
But they don't. A lot don't know how.
Yeah. There is a lot of that. There's a lot of fear. I see that a lot in
a lot of fear.
So, you see some managers, I call them the absent managers. They just disappear in their office. They shut their door and they work on things. And it's not necessarily because they don't want to get to know their people and they want to be on the shop floor or in the office and walking around meeting people. It's just that they're kind of scared. They're an introvert, right? And so they're comfortable in their office. So sometimes fear drives some of this behavior,
Sure does.
or someone that maybe got promoted, just barely got promoted. Like he didn't have the same, degrees as everybody else, didn't have the same experience, but got promoted. So they fear they're going to lose their job. And so if they say something wrong or do something wrong, so they're very controlling on what, what's said about them. And so I think fear drives a lot of that behavior as well too. I think you mentioned earlier, Sherri, that sometimes it's lack of training, right? They're trained as an engineer, right? They've been to school, right? They're really good technically. And then, you're the engineering manager now. Well, I've not had any training on how to manage people. Right. Yeah. So sometimes it's training, sometimes it's fear, sometimes sometimes people are just jerks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
The ego. It's the ego that,
Yeah.
you know, and there's a place for the ego
Mhm.
but you've got to, it's what place is it? And
Right,
that drives a lot of that too. It's and that's where the equipping comes in, right, John?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
okay. You want to promote performers. That's what people do. Well, you're high performer, we're going to promote you to a manager. All right, I get the reason why you want to, because you know that they have a good work ethic and that they're good at what they did. 100% hands down. Now, what qualities of a leader do they have?
Mm.
Can you pinpoint that as a leader? Can you identify what those qualities are? Can you identify where those weak areas are in that person so that you can equip them and train them to strengthen those weak areas, and then then see if they're going to be a good, successful manager?
Mm.
Most of the time, it doesn't happen, right?
Right.
You know why? Because there's no leadership playbook. You don't get a manual. When you become a manager, here's a manager. Here's a manual that you can follow as a leader. You follow that blueprint, and you are going to be spectacular.
Yeah.
There isn't one. It doesn't exist. Because not one playbook is going to work for other. And see, and that's where Sherri and we're so passionate about. And we are, in our opinion, rewriting that playbook. And it's called empowerment leadership. Because that playbook needs to be recreated and replayed in order for it to be successful. Now, yeah, you still have to, we manage people. You got to be, we're not talking about treating people like fine china here. You as a leader, you still have to, while you're still people-centric, people-focused, but you also still have to have candor as well.
I was going to say care and candor.
You have to have care and candor, right? You got to care for them, but you also have to understand as a leader, and this is where the candor comes in. In order to coach somebody and direct someone to be a good, successful leader or whatever role that they're in, whether it's a leader or not, and you're coaching them as part of your team, so there's times that you have to be candid with them and say, well, let's work on some of these weaknesses you might have so we can strengthen those, or work on those strengths so we can overpower the weaknesses. That's really what we like to do. But that doesn't mean you don't care for them. You still got to care for them. And you want that to stand out more than anything else.
Yeah.
What do you want people to say if they come to you and and this is morbid, but we use this question a lot when we coach is, hey, just at your funeral, what do you want people to say about you? Mm-hmm. What are they going to say right now if something happens at your funeral? And at your funeral, let's just say, what would they say about you? Now, well, I would hope not what you hope they would say. What would they say today? Right?
He managed the bottom line really well.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line really well. If it wasn't for him, we'd have never made $1 billion.
Right.
Or do you want them to say, they was probably one of the most caring people I've ever met in my life, and I knew that I could talk to them.
Yeah.
And they always had my interest at heart.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot from them, because the times that I was the weakest and I really wasn't performing well, they gave me the kick that I needed, but in a very loving way, in order for me to really kick it into high gear. And that's why I became the director of this department, because of their guidance.
Yeah.
You see, there's a different perspective there, but it's something to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. I always like to say that leaders create ripples. It's that drop in the water, and it spreads out, and the people that you affect then affect other people, and other people are affected. And it's just and it can grow from there. It can grow in a positive way, and it can also grow in a negative way too.
Exactly.
So, but leaders, all leaders create ripples, whether they're great or not. And that's the question: is what kind of impact are you making around you?
It it'll last long after you're gone.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are you guys working on now? What's going on in your team?
We've got some really good things that I think that'll add some big value to others. We're finalizing and finishing up a program that I have an IT background, as I mentioned to you prior, but I do have an IT background, and we're creating a program where it helps for nonprofits specifically, but we can use this for any group, where it blends knowledge of IT in with entrepreneurship. So now we get to start right there and give the value of being successful, strong leaders right at the start and training people to be entrepreneurs, but at the same time giving them the tools, something they could take with them, like IT security, and bring that into some new level for themselves. So that's one program we're creating now that's going to have some solid value to it. But the other one that we're really proud of
Our group coaching.
is our group coaching program that is part of the empowerment leadership system. And just like you, John, we're writing a book. We're co-writing a book together.
Oh, nice.
That is called Empowerment Leadership: The 10 Things Every Leader Must Do to Lead with Influence.
Nice.
And so that's going to be released in August. And so that'll be all part of this program. So that program right there on empowerment leadership, those 10 things a leader must do every day, must do to lead with influence, is all part of that program. And it'll incorporate a group coaching perspective with that as well.
Very good. I love it. That's great. So how can people find out more about your company? Oh, is there my dog? I have dogs.
Oh, that's okay. Hey, they wanted to chime in. That's cool.
Right. So this just proves I'm not in a professional studio right now. For those of you who are listening and wondering, I'm in my house. And those are
you asked how to find us. The dogs know. I mean,
those are my golden retrievers. So
that's awesome.
When I started this podcast, I actually said, you're going to hear a bark every once in a while. It's just the way it is.
It makes it real, John.
Yeah. It is completely real. So how can people
go to Google?
Yeah, it's LouEverettGroup.com, but you can actually put in right on Google Lou Everett. Trust us, we'll pop up.
We're in there.
Okay. We are on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. So feel free to reach out.
You go to LouEverettGroup.com. Our phone number is there too. Yeah, we'll actually answer the phone, believe it or not, and or there's a contact us. But we love hearing from people. So just reach out to us and talk to us. It's not you're not going to get a bill in the mail for calling us and talking to us for 10 minutes.
That's good. I will do this. I'll put all the links to all of your contact information and the website. I'll put that all in the show notes. So people who are driving and listening to this don't have to write it down.
Nope.
So.
Long text and drive, people.
Well, that's good. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate you guys coming on the show and sharing what you're doing. I really appreciate this. It's great to see kind of, another group that's trying to do what I'm trying to do.
Exactly.
Which is
see, he's happy too. They're happy.
trying to build a world with better bosses, and I think that's really good. And you say transforming today's leaders, and but it's the same concept. We're trying to improve the level of leadership out there, and I think that's a really honorable thing you're doing. And I appreciate you doing it and being on the show and talking about it. So thank you for being on the show.
You're welcome, John. And thank you for being in the space too and having the same mindset there. There's power in numbers, man. And the more we put it out there and help people to become those solid leaders like you're doing, that's what's going to make this happen. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that's it for today. Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we can continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is John Rennie saying take care and lead well.